Look down at the text you read today, or the clock tracking your time in precise increments of 60 seconds. Those concepts didn't evolve slowly across the globe. They were engineered on a specific patch of dirt in modern-day Iraq, over 5.5 millennia ago. Prior to 3500 BCE, human survival required constant movement. Hunting and foraging forced populations to remain scattered and mobile. As long as people had to chase their calories, they could never pause long enough to build permanent infrastructure, capping the physical scale of human growth. The end of that perpetual wandering began between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This specific geographic corridor provided a rare combination of continuous fresh water and highly fertile soil, creating the absolute perfect conditions to stop moving and start planting. They began manipulating the environment, carving narrow, hand-dug irrigation channels to direct river water deep into the dry earth. This artificial watering system generated massive, reliable crop yields, creating humanity's first true food surpluses. Food was no longer the primary existential threat, but consolidating thousands of people into a single stationary location created a totally new pressure. Packed densely together, human populations required complex social order to avoid collapsing into chaos. The Sumerian people engineered the solution, constructing the world's first true cities. The massive architectural scale of Ur and Uruk proved that dense urban living was structurally possible. But dense populations generated an administrative nightmare. Merchants traded thousands of grain bushels and livestock daily. Almost immediately, the volume of these economic transactions outpaced the capacity of the human brain to accurately remember them. This tablet shows cuneiform, wedge-shaped indentations pressed into clay. As the earliest known writing system, it served as a permanent data storage drive. By externalizing human memory onto these physical hard drives, early administrators could maintain economic ledgers, draft trade agreements, and eventually record mythologies. This geometric artifact reveals their second major data tool, a base 60 mathematical system. They divided the circle into 360 degrees and structured their calendars and time calculations around the number 60. Coordinating thousands of strangers required rigid systems of shared reality. Writing and math provided the exact informational infrastructure necessary to scale human cooperation far beyond the limits of a small village. Success bred aggressive expansion. As these dense Sumerian cities grew outward, their borders collided. Proximity inevitably triggered intense competition over land and agricultural resources, locking the region into brutal localized warfare. Around 2334 BCE, an Akkadian ruler named Sargon engineered a radical political concept. He forcibly unified dozens of these distinct, warring cities under his single, ultimate authority, creating history's very first empire. This model of territorial expansion peaked with the Assyrian Empire. They utilized heavy iron weaponry and a ruthless, highly organized military doctrine to conquer and dominate a massive geographic region. Early Sumerian administrators proved that ledgers and data could manage a single city. The Akkadians and Assyrians proved that brute, unapologetic military force was required to forcibly stretch borders across the known world. Armies are highly effective at acquiring territory, but they are incredibly inefficient at managing day-to-day civilian disputes. A sword can conquer a population, but it cannot adjudicate a contract dispute or property theft. This black stele displays the Code of Hammurabi, the region's first comprehensive legal operating system. The true innovation was predictability. By chiseling punishments into public stone, Hammurabi removed the arbitrary whims of local judges, establishing a transparent legal framework for the entire society. Predictable legal structures fostered immense domestic stability and a staggering economic surplus. Under King Nebuchadnezzar II, the Neo-Babylonian Empire poured this wealth into advanced astronomy and architectural wonders, transforming Babylon into the richest metropolis on Earth. Without a predictable rulebook, large populations eventually fracture. Codified law provided the final stabilizing mechanism necessary to bind millions of individual, conquered people into one cohesive civilization. Yet for all their dense urban planning and military might, these ancient hyperstructures were incredibly fragile. Maintaining complex empires required continuous logistical perfection. That perfection could not last. Decades of heavy floods devastated agricultural output, while internal friction and weak administrative successions fractured the military. The final blow arrived when invading Persian forces conquered the weakened territories, ending the continuous era of Mesopotamian rule. The physical borders drawn by the Assyrians and Babylonians dissolved completely, but the core logic they engineered to govern those spaces survived the collapse, becoming deeply embedded in human culture. We inherited their invisible architecture. The structural concepts of densely populated urban centers, systematic agricultural irrigation, phonetic writing, and centralized legal codes outlived the empires that drafted them. The inhabitants of the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers proved that humanity could actively engineer its own environment, completely rewriting our evolutionary trajectory. If they had never settled the dirt in ancient Iraq, the modern world you live in would simply not exist.